The crowd in Cedar Ridge had seen strange things before, but nothing like the sight that stopped Jed Halverson in his tracks. A woman stood on a wooden platform in the town square, her hands tied, and a rough grain sack pulled over her head. Men laughed, whispered, and made crude comments, but she didn't bow or bend. She stood tall, straight as a pine trunk, even as they tried to sell her like livestock. Jed hadn't meant to stop. He had come down the mountain only for supplies. Flour, salt, coffee, simple things a lonely man needed to survive the winter. At 42, Jed was a quiet mountain man who avoided trouble and preferred the company of trees over people. But something in him froze at the sight of that hooded woman. Howard Briggs, a horse trader known for his greedy ways, paced the platform with a smug grin. "Come on, gentlemen," Briggs barked. "She's strong as an ox and twice as useful." The crowd muttered. A few laughed. Some looked ashamed. "Why the sack, Briggs?" Someone called out, "Let us see what we're buying." "Terms of sale," Briggs said quickly. Previous owner insisted. "Trust me, you're not buying her for her pretty face." More laughter. Jed felt something tighten in his chest. He didn't know this woman, but the way she squared her shoulders under the sack told him all he needed to know. She had pride. Someone had tried to break her and she'd refused to bend. $3, a man yelled. "2." Another joked, her bound hands curled into fists. Briggs scowled. "Gentlemen, she reads, she cooks, she works hard. This is a good deal. Do I hear a real offer?" The crowd began drifting away. A few men mocked her as they left. A couple of women pulled their shawls tighter and turned their faces away in disgust. "Going once," Briggs called. Jed's jaw clenched. "Going twice." 10. The word left Jed's mouth before he even thought about speaking. The entire crowd turned. Jed wasn't known for talking, much less stepping into town business. But there he was, standing at the edge of the square, voice steady. Briggs lit up like he'd struck gold. $10 from Mr. Scowl. "Halverson, do I hear 15? No one dared challenge the mountain man. "Sold." Jed walked up slowly, pulled the money from his coat and handed it over. He had planned to use that for winter supplies, but something inside him knew he could not ride away and leave her there. Briggs shoved a paper into Jed's hand. "She's all yours. Good luck. You'll need it. And one more thing, keep the sack on until you're well away from town." Jed ignored the warning. He turned to the woman. "Ma'am, can you ride?" A small nod came from beneath the sack. When Jed reached for her elbow, she jerked her arm away and instead held out her bound wrists. She was telling him she'd walk on her own terms. Jed respected that. He untied the rope carefully. Raw marks showed where the bindings had rubbed her skin. They walked through the crowd together. People stepped aside, whispering as Jed helped her onto his horse. She sat rigid, silent. Briggs shouted after them, "No returns. Halver, she's your problem now." Jed didn't answer. He only nudged his horse forward and rode out of Cedar Ridge. The mountains rose ahead, turning golden in the late afternoon sun. For a long time they rode in silence. The sack hit her face, but Jed could feel her trying to hold herself together. The further they went, the more her shoulders eased. Finally her voice came through the sack, low and unsure. "Why?" Jed kept his eyes on the trail, because what they were doing wasn't right. She was quiet for a long time. "You don't know what you've bought," she whispered. "I didn't buy anything," Jed said. "I just paid to get you away from that place." Another pause, then so soft it nearly vanished in the wind. "Thank you." Night crept into the valley by the time they reached Jed's cabin. He lit a lamp, letting a warm glow fill the small wooden room. The woman stepped inside slowly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to breathe. "You can sit," he said gently. She sat, hands folded in her lap. Jed placed a cup of water in front of her, her shoulders stiffened. "The sack," she said quietly. "If you're willing," Jed replied. She nodded. Jed loosened the twine and lifted the sack. He froze. Her face was not what the town had mocked her for. She had strong features, a scar along her cheek and hair roughly cut short. But it was her eyes, one deep brown, the other pale green, that made Jed gasp softly. They were striking, unforgettable. She watched his reaction with a steady calm that told him she had seen ugliness from others before. Jed only said, "Water's fresh. Brought it from the spring this morning." Something in her hardened expression softened. "My name is Mara," she said. "Jed Halverson." She studied him for a moment. "What am I to you, Mr. Halverson?" "A guest who deserved better," he answered. "You're free to leave in the morning if you want." Mara breathed out slowly, relief mixing with disbelief. Outside, a wolf howled across the frozen valley. Inside, for the first time in a long while, two wounded souls began to feel the faint warmth of safety. Morning light filtered through the cabin window, soft and pale, touching the edges of the small room where Jed Halverson had spent 6 quiet years alone. But this morning did not feel quiet. This morning there was someone else breathing in the room. Someone moving gently, careful not to disturb him. Someone who had been sold like an animal the day before and now sat at his table with calm hands and tired eyes. Mara. Jed rose from his bedroll by the fire and found her already awake, standing by the stove as if she had lived here for years. "I hope you don't mind," she said. "Your pans were clean. I thought I'd start breakfast." Jed shook his head. "Not at all." Silence settled between them, not awkward but full of thoughts neither had spoken. She set a bowl of stew on the table. "I'll be gone after this," she said. "I'm not your burden." Jed took a seat. "You're not my burden and you don't have to leave unless you want to." Mara's mismatched eyes studied him for a long moment, strong brown in one, icy green in the other. Eyes that held secrets she had not yet shared. "I fought back," she finally said. "That's why I ended up on that platform. He told the town I was wild, dangerous, that I needed a man to control me. That's the story they believed." Jed didn't flinch. Then they believed the wrong man. She looked down at her hands, scarred from work and hardship. "You should know what you're offering, Jed Halverson. If I stay here, trouble follows." "Trouble doesn't scare me," Jed replied. "I've lived through worse." Mara drew a breath, steadying herself. "There's more. I had a sister, Eliza. She's 17, a good girl, too gentle for this world. When I escaped, she didn't. He kept her as punishment, as a warning." Jed felt something cold settle in his stomach. "You want to get her," he said softly. "I want to save her," Mara whispered, "but I don't know how to do it alone." Jed nodded. "Then you're not alone." Before Mara could answer, hoofbeat had sounded outside. Jed stood fast, reaching for his rifle as 3 riders approached through the snow. A federal marshal and 2 deputies. Jed stepped out onto the porch, rifle resting against his arm. "Jed Halverson," the marshal called. "That's me," the marshal dismounted. "Name's Roy Brennan. I'm here for a woman believed to be in York. Goes by Mara." Mara stepped onto the porch beside Jed, her shoulders squared, her eyes steady. "I'm here by choice," she said. "He didn't take me." "That may be," Brennan replied, "but you're still under contract to Garrett Walsh of the Double Bar Ranch. These papers say you abandoned your service and stole property." "Lies," Mara said, her voice shaking with anger, every bit of it. Jed felt heat rising in his chest. "She's not going anywhere." Brennan held up a hand. "Easy, Halverson. I need to hear her side." They went inside. Brennan sat at the table while one deputy took notes. The others stayed outside to watch the horses. "Tell me what happened," Brennan said. Mara told them everything. The forced servitude, the beatings, the escape, the lies Walsh spread, the sister he still held. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands trembled. Jed listened with fists clenched, each word hitting him harder than the last. She had survived so much, more than most men ever had to. When she finished, Brennan sat back, face grim. "These are serious accusations," he said. "Do you have proof?" "Letters," Mara replied. "Gifts, things his wife gave me. They're hidden under a floorboard at the ranch if they're still there." Brennan thought for a long moment. "I believe you, but Walsh's influence runs high. If he files charges, you'll have a fight on your hands." "We'll manage," Jed said. "There is one way," Brennan continued. "If Mara were married before she left the ranch, Walsh's contract couldn't hold. A married woman answers to her husband, not an employer." Mara stiffened. Jed looked at her quietly. Brennan placed a folded paper on the table. "A judge in Silver City can backdate a marriage certificate, make it legal." Mara's voice barely rose above a whisper. "You're saying I should marry Jed to save myself." Jed met her eyes. "Only if you want to, not because anyone tells you to." The cabin fell silent. Then Mara reached out, setting her hand over Jed's. "I don't want a false marriage," she said. "If I do this, I want it real." Jed felt the weight of the moment settle in his chest, not fear. "Something else. I'll stand with you," he said, "through whatever comes." Brennan nodded. "I'll bring the papers soon as I can." Before they could speak further, shouting sounded outside. Jed grabbed his rifle. Mara stood ready. 3 trappers rode into the clearing, snow flying under their boots. Halverson, old Tom Buchanan, shouted. "Walsh hired men, real killers, regulators. They're coming for Mara. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow." Jed looked at Mara, then at the mountains rising above them. Trouble had found them after all. Mara's jaws set like stone. "We fight," she said. Jed nodded. "We fight." The trappers stayed only long enough to deliver the warning. As they rode off, Jed stepped inside the cabin and shut the door behind him. Outside, snow fell thick and silent. Inside, two people who had once been strangers now stood side by side, ready to defend their lives. "Whatever comes," Jed said quietly, "we'll face it together." Mara looked up at him with steady eyes that had seen too much pain and still held strength. "I'm not running anymore," she whispered. And the cabin, once a place of loneliness, now felt like the heart of a storm where courage was being forged. Night settled heavy over the mountains, pressing the world into silence as Jed and Mara prepared the cabin for what was coming. Jed checked every window, every bullet, every weak board in the wall. Mara moved beside him with steady hands, loading shells, warming food, placing blankets near the fire in case the fight lasted till dawn. The cabin had been a quiet refuge for years, but tonight it felt like a fortress. And at the center of it stood two people who refused to be broken. "They'll come before midnight," Jed said, staring out into the dark treeing. "I know," Mara answered. "Walsh doesn't scare me. He never did. But the men he hired, they're different." Jed stepped closer. "They won't take you, not while I'm alive." Mara's mismatched eyes softened. "And I won't let them take you either." They shared a moment of quiet strength before a sharp sound cut through the night. Horses, not the slow walk of travelers, not the confident ride of townsfolk. This was the hard, deliberate approach of killers. Jed and Mara took their positions. Jed crouched by the front window with his rifle. Mara stood at the back door with a shotgun braced against her shoulder. Then a voice roared through the darkness. "Halverson, send the woman out, Oregon. We'll take her out, Garrett Walsh." He had come himself. Mara stiffened, fury rising in her eyes. "Coward," she whispered. Jed didn't answer. He was focused on the shadows shifting just beyond the clearing. "Last chance," Walsh shouted. "She's my property." Jed fired the first shot. A man screamed, dropping behind a log. Chaos erupted as Walsh's hired guns charged from three sides at once. Bullets slammed into the cabin walls, shattering wood and sending splinters flying. Mara fired back through the back window, forcing two men to dive for cover. Jed hit another, trying to rush the front door. The cabin shook under the assault, but neither of them gave ground. "Fire the torches," Walsh yelled. A flaming stick flew through the air but hissed out the moment it hit the damp roof. Jed had soaked it earlier, knowing this trick would come. "Try harder," Walsh barked. Another torch flew. It fizzled too. Jed smirked. "Nice try." But then the front door exploded inward. Two men charged through the smoke. Jed shot the first before he could raise his gun. The second fired wildly, the bullet grazing Jed's shoulder and knocking his hat off. Before he could shoot again, Mara fired from behind the kitchen doorway, dropping him to the floor. The cabin filled with gunsom smoke and the smell of pine. Jed ducked behind the overturned table they had set up as cover. Mara, reload. Already on it. Outside, men cursed and shouted. They were regrouping, preparing another rush. Jed could hear Walsh's voice, furious and desperate. "He dies tonight. The woman lives." Mara's hands tightened around her weapon. "He will not touch you," she muttered. Just then a man climbed through the back window, landing cat-like on the floor, gun drawn. "Mara," Jed shouted, but she saw him first. She swung Jed's old pistol and fired clean. The man crumpled at her feet. Her breath shook for only a second before she steadied herself again. More shots came from outside, but these sounded different. Thicker, louder, more weapons. Jed frowned. "That's not them." A moment later, an answering shout rose from the woods. "Halverson, hold on." It was Tom Buchanan, and he wasn't alone. Every trapper, miner, and mountain man Jed had ever helped came riding in like an avalanche. Their rifles cracked through the night, scattering Walsh's hired guns in all directions. Some regulators tried to run. Others threw down their weapons and surrendered. A few fought back, but they were outnumbered and outmatched. "Where's Walsh?" Tom shouted. A rider broke from the chaos, fleeing toward the trees. Jed recognized the fancy coat even in the moonlight. "That's him," Jed said. Mara didn't waste a second. She grabbed a fallen rifle, braced herself at the doorway, and fired. The shot struck Walsh's horse. It stumbled, throwing him into the snow. By the time he scrambled up, two of Tom's sons were on him, pinning him down. Moments later, Walsh was dragged into the cabin clearing, his fine clothes torn, his face pale and shaking. Mara stepped forward. For the first time, she wasn't the one being judged. She was the one holding power. "You're done," she said. "You'll free my sister. You'll release me from every contract. You'll confess the lies you spread." "Or what?" Walsh spat. Jed lifted his rifle. "Or you never leave this mountain," he said. Walsh's eyes darted from one to the other. He knew he had lost. With shaking hands, he did what Mara demanded, writing every word needed to free Eliza and clear Mara's name. When it was done, Tom hauled him away to face whatever justice the territory would bring. As the last rider disappeared into the night, Jed and Mara stood alone on the porch, the quiet settling around them like new snow. "It's over," Mara whispered. "For now," Jed said softly. "But there's one more person we need to bring home," Mara nodded, tears shining in her mismatched eyes. "Eliza." And so at first light they rode out. Just the two of them riding into danger again, but this time not alone. This time as partners, as something deeper. When they found Eliza days later, scared, weak, and believing her sister dead, the reunion broke something open inside both women. Jed watched quietly, knowing this moment was theirs. Mara held her sister tight, whispering over and over, "You're safe." And when Eliza finally looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes and said, "Thank you for bringing my sister back," Jed felt something settle in his heart, something warm, something he hadn't felt in years, a home forming, a family beginning, a life he never expected to have. Months later, under spring skis and mountain air, Jed and Mara stood in front of friends and neighbors as husband and wife. Not because of papers or fear, but because they'd fought through darkness together and built something worth keeping. Mara's eyes shone, brown and green, filled with a peace she had never known. Jed took her hand. "No regrets," she whispered. "Not one," he said. "You were never a burden, Mara. You were the beginning." Their cabin was no longer a lonely place on the mountain. It was a home, a refuge, a promise, and their story lived on. Across the ridge towns, whispered beside campfires, and told by travelers who loved a tale of courage, justice, and a love strong enough to rise from ruin.